At the family birthday toast, my uncle called me a cautionary tale, and my mom nodded along. He didn't even hesitate, like he'd been rehearsing it in the car. Uncle Rick stood up with his glass held high, cheeks already pink from the beer he'd been bragging about, and everyone did that automatic thing families do. Forks pause mid-air, conversations taper off, chairs squeak as people lean in. The restaurant's fairy lights made everything look softer than it was. My mom was right beside him, smiling with that tight, polite smile she saves for photos, and when Rick said my name, her eyes didn't dart to me. They stayed on him, like she was watching a teacher deliver a lesson. And to Sophie, he said, nodding toward my cousin in the birthday sash, "May you keep your head on straight, make good choices, and not end up like him." He tipped his glass toward me, and my mom actually nodded, once slow and approving, like she'd just heard something wise. I felt my stomach drop, so hard it was like the chair disappeared for a second. Heat rushed up my neck. My hands went cold around my water glass, and my mouth opened with nothing ready to come out. Around the table, laughter landed unevenly. Some people laughing too loud, some too fast, some like they were trying to be invisible inside the sound. I looked at Mom's nod again, like maybe I could rewind it and make it not real, but it had already happened. She was still smiling. The room kept moving like I wasn't even there. Sophie laughed because she had to. Dad chuckled and said, "Oi," in that half-scolding, half-encouraging tone like it was playful. My aunt's bracelets clinked as she clapped her hands together. Someone at a nearby table glanced over, curious for a second, then looked away, back to their own life. The waiter slid past with a tray of drinks, and the smell of citrus and fried food hit me and made me nauseous. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, thick and loud, and I felt this pressure behind my eyes like tears were lining up to betray me. Uncle Rick's grin widened because the joke had landed, and he sat down like he'd just done everyone a favor. Mum reached for her wine and took a sip, still smiling, still nodding a little like she agreed with the whole thesis. I kept my gaze on the condensation running down my glass because if I looked at her properly, I thought I might actually break something. My voice, my plate, my composure, I didn't know. All I knew was my name had turned into a punchline, and my mum had endorsed it in front of everyone. It was Saturday night, Sophie's 25th birthday, the kind of family dinner that's really an audience. Mum had been texting reminders all week were something nice. Don't be late. Be positive. Like I was a toddler she needed to manage so the adults could relax. We were at this mid-range Italian place Mum loves because it's classy but not pretentious, which is her way of saying you could get a decent photo for Facebook without paying fine dining prices. She'd booked a long table. There were balloons tied to the end chair, a cake box tucked under the table, and the restaurant had put out those little tea candles that smell faintly of vanilla and smoke. Everyone showed up looking shiny and put together, and I showed up with that familiar feeling of walking into a room already trailing a narrative behind me. My family has a story they tell about me, sometimes out loud, sometimes in glances, and no matter what I do, they drag it back to the surface like a hook. In their story, I'm sensitive. I'm difficult. I make things about me. I can't take a joke. I'm also, apparently, a cautionary tale. The stupid thing is, if you asked anyone outside my family, they describe me as normal. Quiet, maybe a bit guarded. Someone who shows up when they say they will. Someone who pays their bills. Someone who tries. But in my family, I'm permanently frozen at the worst version of myself that ever existed. I could become a doctor tomorrow, and my uncle would still find a way to say, "Yeah, but remember when he dropped out that one time?" Because the point isn't accuracy. The point is hierarchy. When Rick called me that, it wasn't just a one-off cheap shot. It connected to a whole chain of moments that had been building for years. The only reason it hit like a punch is because it finally said out loud what everyone's been acting out quietly. I used to think the cautionary tale label came from my early 20s. I had a rough patch. I don't even know how to explain it without sounding like I'm trying to justify myself. But whatever, this is Reddit, and I'm venting. I moved out at 19, worked a bunch of retail jobs, tried university because it felt like what you're supposed to do, and I crashed. Not in a dramatic movie way. In a slow, gray, can't get out of bed, Can't stop feeling like I'm failing at breathing way. Depression, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. I dropped a semester. I worked. I tried again. I dropped another semester. I bounced between doing okay and barely holding it together. My family didn't talk about mental health. They talked about attitude. So it became, he just doesn't want to work hard, and he's wasting his potential, and he's always got some excuse. The part they conveniently ignore is that I didn't stop living. I didn't stop trying. I did what you do when your brain is on fire. You take whatever job you can, you get your rent paid, you try to stay alive without making it anyone else's problem. I eventually got stable work in admin. Not glamorous, but steady. I moved into a small place. I paid my own way. I kept my head down. I stopped bringing my struggles to family dinners because every vulnerable thing I said turned into a new weapon later. I thought that would change the story. It didn't, because the story isn't about my current reality. It's about the role I serve. I'm the example everyone points at so they can feel like they're doing life correctly. Rick especially loves it because Rick has built his whole personality around being practical. He's the guy who thinks emotional nuance is weakness. He's always telling people they need to toughen up while simultaneously needing to be the smartest voice in every room. And Mom is complicated. Mom isn't a villain who wakes up thinking, how can I hurt my son today? Mom is the kind of person who will bring you soup when you're sick and also tell you you're too much if you cry in public. She loves peace more than she loves truth. She would rather you quietly bleed than make the carpet messy. So she learned to nod along to whatever keeps the room calm, even if it costs me. I think that's what hurt most at the toast, not Rick's mouth. Mom's nod. After the laughter died down, everyone went back to their plates like nothing happened. Fork scraped. Someone started talking about work. Sophie opened a gift bag and squealed over a perfume set. I sat there with my shoulders stiff, forcing my face into something neutral. I focused on small details like I was doing grounding exercises in a therapy office. The pattern on a napkin, the faint oil sheen on my pasta, the way the candle flame wobbled when the air conditioner kicked on. My whole body was trying to decide whether to fight or flee, and my brain was doing its usual frantic math. If you react, you'll be called dramatic. If you stay quiet, you'll feel like you agreed. If you leave, you'll be punished later. If you cry, you'll hate yourself. Mom leaned toward me at one point, voice low, like she was doing damage control without acknowledging damage. Don't take it personally, she whispered, eyes still on her plate. Istir de her. How was that not personal? I whispered back. She gave me a quick look, warning, not comfort. Please, she said, like I was the one about to ruin Sophie's birthday by having a nervous system. Across from me, Rick was already telling another story. I'm just saying, he said loudly. Kids these days, they want everything easy. Back in my day, and everyone laughed again because Rick has 3 jokes and repeats them forever. My cousin Sophie caught my eye for a second. Her smile faltered, just slightly, like she realized what had happened was gross. Then she looked away and went back to opening gifts because what was she supposed to do? It was her birthday. She was trapped in the middle. I felt the chair under me. I felt the weight of my phone in my pocket. I felt my hands shaking under the table where nobody could see. I excused myself to the bathroom because my body needed space. I stood up slowly so it wouldn't look dramatic. I walked past the bar, past a couple laughing over cocktails, past the kitchen doors swinging open and shut with bursts of hot air. In the bathroom, the lighting was harsh and the mirror was unforgiving. I gripped the edge of the sink and stared at myself like I was trying to recognize the person who keeps volunteering to be hurt. My eyes were glossy. My face looked too tight. I ran cold water over my wrists and tried to breathe normally. And then, because timing hates me, I heard someone come in behind me. Mom. She didn't even wash her hands. She just stood by the door like she was guarding it and said, "Why do you always do this?" I laughed once, quietly, because it was so predictable it was almost funny. Do what? I asked, still staring at my own reflection. She sighed, exasperated, like I was a broken appliance. Get all wounded, she said, making a vague gesture near her chest. It was a toast. It was a joke. He called me a cautionary tale, I said, and my voice cracked on cautionary because my throat was tight. Mom's mouth pinched. You know, Rick, she said. He doesn't think before he speaks. You nodded, I said, and I turned to look at her then because I needed her to see me. Her eyes flicked away instantly. I nodded because everyone was looking. She snapped like that explained it. I wasn't going to start something at Sophie's birthday. So you chose him, I said quietly. Not accusing, just stating it. Because it was true. Mom's face changed. Anger flashed first, defensiveness, then something like fear. Then she put the mask back on. Don't be like that, she said. It's not choosing. It's keeping the peace. I could feel my hands trembling again. I pressed my palms flat on the counter to steady them. Peace for who? I asked. Because it's never peaceful for me. Mom's eyes got wet, and I knew what was coming. Tears. The guilt lever. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't do this with you tonight. Just come back out and smile. Please. For me. For her. Always for her. Always for the image. Always for the moment. I stared at her for a long second and felt something in me go tired in a new way. Not the panicky tired. The resigned tired. Like my body was finally realizing it's been carrying a weight that wasn't mine to carry. I'll come back out, I said. But I'm not pretending it didn't happen. Mom wiped her eyes quickly like she was erasing evidence. Just don't make a scene, she whispered, and then she left first so she could return to the table without looking like she'd been crying. When I went back out, everyone was still laughing. Rick was telling Sophie she should marry Rich. Dad was smiling too wide. Talia was scrolling on her phone, occasionally chiming in to keep her relevance. Nobody asked where I'd been. Nobody noticed the crack in me. Or they noticed and decided it wasn't their problem. Sophie eventually came to sit beside me when people got up to mingle. She smelled like sweet perfume and champagne. Her cheeks were flushed from attention. Hey, she said softly, nudging my arm. I'm sorry about Uncle Rick. It's not your fault, I said, automatically. She frowned. Still, she said, he's like that. And Mum, she hesitated, eyes flicking toward my mom. I saw. That word, saw, made my throat tighten all over again. Yeah, I said. Sophie picked at the edge of her sash. I don't know how you do it, she whispered. I wanted to say, I don't either. Instead, I said, I'm still figuring it out. She squeezed my hand briefly under the table, quick, secret, then stood up because someone called her name and she had to be the birthday girl again. I sat there and watched my family from a slight distance like I was behind glass. They looked normal. They looked like any other loud family out for dinner. If you didn't know the context, you'd think it was fine. That's the thing about this kind of family dynamic. It's invisible unless you're the one getting nicked by it. It's 1,000 tiny cuts dressed up as humor and honesty, and we're just close like that. Near the end of the night, when the cake came out and everyone started chanting, Dad raised his phone to film. Mum leaned in close to Sophie for the perfect photo. Rick made another comment about don't end up like him, but quieter this time, like he'd gotten his main hit earlier. Talia laughed. Sam, who'd been quiet all night, kept looking at me like he wanted to say something and couldn't find a safe time. After the cake, when people started standing up and collecting coats, Sam finally cornered me near the entrance. He's younger than me by 3 years, tall, and usually goofy, but his face looked strained. You okay? He asked. I shrugged. Define okay, I said, trying for humor and failing. Some is godtaitant. I hate when he does that, he said low. I blinked. When who does what? I asked, even though I knew. Rick, Sam said. Dad too. And Mum. He trailed off, looking toward the table where Mum was still laughing at something Rick said. My chest tightened again, but this time it wasn't just pain. It was something else. Recognition. You noticed, I said. Sam gave a small, bitter laugh. I'm not blind, he said. I'm just stuck. Me too, I admitted, and my voice sounded small in the busy restaurant noise. Sam looked at me for a second, then said, If you leave, they'll blame you. I nodded because he was right. If I stay, they still blame me, I said. Sam's face crumpled slightly. Yeah, he whispered. I went home that night with the restaurant smell clinging to my clothes, garlic wine, sweet cake. I sat on my couch and stared at the dark TV screen like it might tell me what to do. My phone buzzed with family group chat notifications. Photos, great night, Messages, someone teasing Sophie about getting older. Mom sent a photo of her and Rick clinking glasses. Underneath, she wrote, "Family is everything, Red Heart." I stared at it until my eyes burned. The next morning, Mom called like nothing had happened. "Can you send me the photos you took?" she asked, cheerful. I didn't get any good ones of Sophie from my angle. I held the phone away from my ear for a second, like distance could protect me. "I didn't take any," I said. Mom paused. "Why?" she asked, suspicion creeping in. "Because I was too busy being your cautionary tale," I said, and my voice was calm in a way that surprised me. Silence. Then Mom sighed, long and tired, like I was the problem she had to manage. "You're still on that," she said. "Yeah," I replied. "I am." Mom's tone sharpened. "He apologized," she said. "No, he didn't," I said. "He said he didn't mean it." Mom insisted. "That's not an apology," I said, and I felt my hand start to shake again. "And you nodded." Mom's voice rose. "Do you want me to stand up and yell at my brother in a restaurant?" she demanded. "Do you want a scene? Is that what you want?" I closed my eyes. My head hurt. "I wanted you to not agree," I said. "I wanted you to look at me like you're my mom." Mom's breathing changed. I could hear the emotional pivot beginning. "You always make me feel like I'm failing," she whispered, and there it was, the familiar turn where my hurt becomes her suffering. I swallowed. "Mom," I said quietly, "I'm not making you feel anything. I'm telling you what happened." Mom started crying. "I'm so tired," she sobbed. "I can't keep doing this. I just want everyone to get along." I sat on the edge of my bed and rubbed my forehead with my thumb and forefinger. "Getting along can't be me getting stepped on," I said. Mom sniffed. "You're too sensitive," she whispered, and it sounded like she didn't even realize she was repeating the script. Something inside me went still. "Okay," I said. Mom paused. "Okay," she echoed, confused. "Okay," I repeated. "If that's what you believe, then you're not a safe person for me to talk to about this." Mom went quiet, like she didn't know what to do with a boundary that didn't come with a fight. "What does that mean?" she asked, voice small. "It means I'm not coming to family dinners for a while," I said, and my heart was pounding, but my voice stayed steady. "And I'm not sending photos. And I'm not pretending." Mom inhaled sharply. "Don't be dramatic," she snapped. And then, softer, "Please don't do this. People will ask." There was again. People. The audience. The image. "I'm not doing it to punish you," I said. "I'm doing it because I can't keep paying for peace with my self-respect." Mom cried harder. "So you're abandoning us," she said, and it was meant to stab. I stared at my wall. The paint had a tiny scuff near the corner from moving furniture. Normal life details. Grounding. "I'm stepping back," I corrected. "Those aren't the same." Mom kept crying, saying my name like it was a plea and an accusation at the same time. I ended the call gently because I could feel myself starting to shake too much. For the first 2 weeks, the silence was loud. My family group chat kept going without me. Mom sent passive-aggressive messages. "Hope you're okay. We miss you." Dad didn't text at all, which somehow hurt and relieved me simultaneously. Rick sent me a message that said, "Heard you're offended." It was a joke. "Toughen up." Talia posted a story of her and Mom at brunch with the caption "My girls," and I felt my stomach twist like I'd been left out of a photo on purpose. Sophie texted me privately one night, "I'm sorry they did that. I don't agree with it. Are you all right?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I wrote back, "I'm not all right, but I'm also not pretending anymore. Thanks for seeing it." Sam texted a few days later, "Dad's been mad. Mom's been crying. Talia says you're doing it for attention." Then, after a pause, "I don't think you are." That sentence, "I don't think you are," hit me harder than anything else. Not because it fixed things, but because it was proof that someone else could observe the same reality and not immediately label me crazy. A month passed. 2. I started noticing changes I didn't expect. I slept better. My shoulders weren't permanently tense on Sundays. I ate meals without bracing for impact. I laughed with friends without scanning for subtext. And I also felt grief, sharp and random, like seeing a family at the park and getting the sudden ache in my chest because my family could have been that if kindness was valued more than control. Then Mom showed up at my apartment one afternoon without warning. I opened the door, and she was standing there holding a container of lasagna, like a peace offering. eyes puffy, hair pulled back tight. "Can we talk?" she asked, and her voice sounded smaller than usual. I stepped aside and let her in because I'm still me, and I still want my mom, even when my mom hurts me. She sat on my couch like she didn't know where to put her hands. She looked around my living room, small, tidy, quiet, and I could tell it unnerved her because it wasn't stage. It was just my life. She held the lasagna on her lap like it was armor. "I didn't mean to nod," she said finally, staring at her fingers. "I didn't even realize I did it until you said." I watched her carefully, trying to decide if this was real or just another attempt to smooth things over. "You did," I said. Mom nodded now, ironically, but slower, like she was admitting it. "I did," she whispered, "and I'm sorry." Those words landed differently than her phone call tears because she wasn't blaming me. She wasn't talking about people asking. She wasn't asking me to drop it for peace. She was just saying sorry. I felt my throat tighten. "Why now?" I asked, because hope scares me. Mom swallowed. "Because," she said, and her voice trembled, "when you stopped coming it got quiet. And I realized how much I rely on you being the one who absorbs everything. It keeps everything smooth. It keeps Rick laughing. It keeps your father calm. It keeps Talia from turning on me." Her eyes filled. "And that's not fair. That's awful, actually." I sat down opposite her, hands clasped. My heart was pounding again, but it wasn't panic. It was something like relief mixed with grief. "It is awful," I said softly. Mom nodded, tears spilling now. "I think I've been cowardly," she admitted. Saying the word looked like it hurt her mouth. "I've been so afraid of conflict that I've let you take it." I stared at her, blinking slowly, because this was the closest to truth I'd ever heard her speak. "I can't promise your uncle will change," Mom said quickly, wiping her cheeks. "And your father," she flinched slightly. "Your father is your father." But I could stop nodding. I could stop laughing. I can stop pretending it's a joke when it isn't. I exhaled shakily. "That would be a start," I said. Mom reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, then hesitated like she wasn't sure she was allowed to do what she was about to do. "Rick texted me today," she said, voice tight. "He said you're being dramatic. He told me to sort you out." My stomach turned. "And?" I asked. Mom's jaw set. I recognized the look. It's rare on her, but it's there when she's finally angry at someone other than me. "And I told him," she said slowly, "that he doesn't get to use my son as a punchline anymore." My eyes burned. I stared at her, trying to decide if I believed it. "You did?" I asked, and my voice cracked stupidly. Mom nodded. "He didn't like it," she said. "He made a joke about me being soft." And I didn't laugh. Something inside me loosened just slightly. Not healed, not fixed, but loosened. We didn't hug. Not at first. We just sat there in my quiet living room with a lasagna between us and the weight of years hovering in the air. Eventually, Mom whispered, "I miss you." And it sounded less like guilt and more like truth. "I miss you too," I admitted, because I did. I missed the version of her who could be kind without costing me. Before she left, Mom asked, "Will you come to dinner next week?" I thought about it. I pictured the table. Rick's mouth. Dad's eyes. Talia's smirk. The familiar tightening in my chest. Then I pictured Mom's nod, how it had felt like being abandoned in a single movement. "I'll come," I said carefully, "if you understand this. The next time someone calls me a cautionary tale, I'm leaving. And if you ask me to stay to keep the peace, I'm leaving too." Mom swallowed. Her eyes were wet again. "Okay," she whispered. It wasn't a magical ending. It wasn't a family transformation montage. But it was the first time my mom didn't ask me to shrink for the sake of everyone else's comfort. And for the first time, I realized something that hurt and freed me at the same time. I can love my family and still refuse to be their lesson. I can be in the room and not be the sacrifice that keeps the jokes flowing. And if they choose the joke over me again, if Mom nods along again, then at least I'll know I didn't abandon myself to stay.